Hey again, we're reading The Losers Club by Andrew Clements, finishing up chapter 26, Duel. We left off in the middle of page 152, where at the end of literally the middle of the page, the last word in the paragraph we just read was champs. The next paragraph starts with Eddie. Eddie tagged up at first and stayed put. Kent started his cheerleading routine for the pitcher's mound. Hey, hey, great play, champs. Way to go. Now let's. But Alec was on his feet again, clapping his hands like some crazy fan who had escaped from Fenway Park. Let's go, losers. Let's go. Clap, clap. Let's go, losers. Let's go. Clap, clap. And the rest of the team joined in, drowning out Kent's voice. The third batter was a girl, a fifth grader, and Kent yelled, "Heads up for this one, and watch for a fly to shallow right field." Kent had called it correctly. The girl lunged at the first pitch, bumped a weak pop fly directly into the hands of the right fielder. And as Alec walked up to the plate, he realized that by now, Kent must have memorized the strengths and weaknesses of every single player in the active games program. No wonder his team kept winning and winning. Then he thought, except this team has one player that Kent doesn't know at all. Me. The trouble was, Alec didn't know himself as a kickball player either. Of course, like every other kid in the school, he had played kickball lots of times in gym class and outside at recess, but he probably hadn't played in a real game since third grade. Still, he knew he was coordinated, and he also knew that his legs had gotten strong from his time cutting across the lake on a slalom ski. And of course, Kent thought he was dealing with a bookworm, a kid who never did anything more athletic than turn a page and reach for another bag of Cheetos. The truth was more like what his dad had said when they had talked that Saturday morning. Nobody can be summed up by one label. And Alec truly was kind of a sports guy, except only about a dozen people on Earth knew that, and Kent wasn't one of them. So really, I'm a secret sports guy. With all these thoughts running through his head, Alex stepped into the kicker's box and looked at Kent, and then far beyond Kent. Along the back wall of the gym, all the club kids were sitting up on their tables like they were bleachers, facing the kickball game. The news had spread, and over in the far corner, he saw Jason and Lily and Nina waving their arms. Alec gulped. He had made himself the center of a small spectacle. A smug, snarly smile lit up Kent's face, and the captain of the champs looked around at the diamond and shouted, easy out, and here we go. He delivered the first pitch, and Alec pretended to be confused. He kicked a fumbling foul ball down the third base line, but that little bit of contact gave him a good feel for the ball and for the speed and strength of Kent's pitches. The ball came in fast. Kent sneered, "Ooh, that was so scary. Please, please don't hurt us with your dangerous kicking." Alec felt his heart pounding. He hadn't noticed it before. The kids on his bench were cheering him on, and over at first, Eddie was dancing around the base like a puppy who needed a frisbee to chase. Alec's vision sharpened, and the focus got narrower and narrower until all he could see was an 8.5-inch red ball cradled by a single hand. The ball moved backward, back, and then it eased forward and slid onto the gym floor. But the ball came slowly, rolling over and over like a weightless rocket in space, so slowly that he could read the black lettering and see the little dot where the air went in. As his foot met the ball, everything snapped back into full speed. The ball took off like a flaming arrow, and Mr. Jensen yelled, "Fair ball!" By the time Alec passed first base, Eddie was rounding third and heading for home. Speeding past second, Alec saw Dave and the left fielder digging the ball out from behind the Chinese club table. His kick had reached the back wall. Dave had a great arm, but there was no way Alec was going to hold up at third base. And there was no need to have even worried. The ball didn't get back into the infield until he had crossed home plate. Eddie started the chanting this time, "Losers, losers, losers, losers." And it went on until Mr. Jensen made them stop and send their next kicker to the plate. Alec had 5 other turns kicking during the rest of the game, and he did pretty well. 2 singles, 1 double, and 1 out, a pop fly to left field. The game went the usual 5 innings, and the champs won. Kent drove in 6 runners with 4 huge home runs, but everybody knew that the one run that mattered most had been scored back in the first inning by Alec Spencer, the bookworm. At the end of the game, Alec went to the mound and shook Kent's hand, and this time it didn't turn into a bone-crushing contest. With no trace of meanness or sarcasm, Alec said, "Great game. Really, if there was a pro kickball league for kids, you would be the MVP every season." Kent wasn't sure how to reply, and Alec suddenly felt sorry for him. Losing at anything seemed to make him sick, almost physically ill. But Kent did okay. He took the compliment and even sent a small one back at Alec. "Yeah, well, with some work, you might turn into a decent player yourself." Then Alec said something he hadn't planned to. "Listen, that bet, it wasn't really fair. I had a whole game to score 1 run, and it could have happened because of errors made by other kids, which wouldn't have been your fault, you know? So don't worry about it. And besides, I had a good time out there. I haven't played kickball in a long time." Shaking his head, Kent said, "A bet is a bet, and I lost. So I'll see you tomorrow over there." And he nodded toward the back corner of the gym. Kent and his team went right into their next game, but Alec was all done with sports. Scoring a run and kind of beating Kent in his own game, he thought he was going to feel great, like Luke after he blew up the Death Star, or Robin Hood after he crushed the Sheriff of Nottingham. But it wasn't like that, because he wasn't some hero, and Kent wasn't a villain, not really. As he walked back toward the back of the gym, there was a burst of clapping from the clubs, which made him blush and feel even worse. And at the Losers Club, it didn't let up. Lily beamed at him. "You were awesome." Jason said, "You totally killed over there." And they both looked at him like he had just won Olympic gold. Nina didn't gush. She just smiled and said, "Looked like you were having fun." If she had been impressed by the way he had nailed that home run, she didn't show it, and Alec was glad. He didn't want any more attention. Right away, he opened his bag and started looking for a book. Everyone got the message and went back to reading. But Alec was actually replaying everything that had just happened, moment by moment. And as he did that, the whole episode started to seem more and more like a cheap stunt. And making Kent agree to sit and read with Losers Club for a week, that felt like a mean trick. Except now the joke was on him, because less than an hour after Nina had pushed Kent out of her life, what had he just done? He had pulled Kent right back in, 3 hours a day at the same table for 5 days. And even though Alec had thought it might be good for Kent to have to sit still and read, he admitted to himself that, really, he'd been looking for revenge. And now his great plan had totally boomeranged. "I'm such an idiot," which was the nicest word Alec could find for himself. Then his instincts took over, and he did what he had done so many other times he'd been upset. He reached for a book, and the one he grabbed was Charlotte's Web. He opened up to where he'd left off 2 weeks ago, sitting in the backseat of the minivan in a dark garage, which seemed like a moment from a different century. Back then, he hadn't wanted anyone to see him reading a book about a talking spider and a pig named Wilbur. But now, he didn't care. He needed a story that felt simple and true, and he made himself begin to read, pushing all his other thoughts aside. For more than 20 minutes, Fern and Wilbur and Templeton and Charlotte blocked out all of Alec's problems and worries and fears. He probably would have kept reading right up until 6 o'clock, but at about 5:45, someone tapped him on the shoulder. "Hi, Alec." Alec looked up, blinking as he shifted back to real life. It was Mr. Wilner. "Oh, hi." Mr. Wilner said, "These are your newest club members. This is Sarah Jeffries, Julia Hampton, and Ellen Gabriel." Julia smiled and said, "Hi, Alec. So, where should we sit?" And that's the end of the chapter. See you again.